On Tenerife, March 27, 1977, a strange, heavy silence fell over Los Rodeos airport. The world seemed to hold its breath, as if time itself had paused, waiting for something unseen to unfold. The familiar Panza de Burro fog crept in, but today it felt different, ancient, almost sentient. It moved with purpose, rolling in thicker and faster than usual, as if it had a mind of its own. The world shrank as the mist thickened, swallowing hills, runways, and color, leaving only gray and shadow. Landmarks vanished, and even the brightest lights became faint, ghostly glimmers in the gloom. Birds fell silent, the usual airport hum faded, replaced by a chilling stillness. It was as if the fog had muffled not just sound but life itself, pressing down on every living thing. The fog didn't just obscure sight, it dampened sound, stole warmth, and brought a sense of unease. Every footstep echoed strangely, and voices seemed to vanish before reaching their destination. It felt like a presence, probing the tarmac, caressing the metal of grounded jets. The aircraft, usually symbols of power and escape, now looked vulnerable, shrouded in the ghostly embrace of the mist. The air, once scented with jet fuel and ocean, now smelled of earth and decay. The freshness of the island was gone, replaced by a damp, heavy odor that hinted at something old and forgotten. A chain of events, a bomb at another airport, diverted flights, had brought hundreds here, all trapped by the fog. Stranded passengers pressed against the glass, peering into the white void, their plans and patience dissolving in the haze. It felt less like coincidence, more like a carefully laid trap. The fog seemed to herd everyone together, closing off every escape, as if fate itself had chosen this place and moment. The sky, earth, and air seemed to conspire, weaving a net of fate. Every element joined in, blurring boundaries, making it impossible to tell where the ground ended and the heavens began. The stage was set for tragedy, the fog its closing curtain. In that thick, whispering veil, destiny waited, silent, patient, and unseen. In the KLM 747 cockpit, Captain Jacob Van Zanten, a celebrity pilot with a reputation for precision, felt the pressure of mounting delays and the ever-present threat of exceeding strict duty time rules. He was a man used to control, to being the face of KLM in advertisements, and now, every minute lost on the ground weighed heavily on his shoulders. Van Zanten wanted nothing more than to get his passengers and crew home safely and on time. To him, the thick, rolling fog outside was just another obstacle to be managed, a challenge, but not an insurmountable one. He trusted his experience, his training, and his crew. Meanwhile, in the Pan Am 747, Captain Victor Grubbs and co-pilot Robert Bragg faced a different kind of tension. The airport was unfamiliar, the taxiways confusing, and the radio instructions muddled by language barriers and static. The blinding fog outside the windows made every movement uncertain, every decision fraught with risk. Their instincts screamed that something was wrong, that the situation was slipping beyond their grasp. Every sense was on high alert, searching for clarity in the murk. In the control tower, Spanish controllers struggled to keep order. Their English was limited, and the radio frequencies were crowded with overlapping voices. They tried to manage the unseen giants moving across a fog-shrouded airfield, relying on incomplete information and their own intuition. They pieced together a mental map from fragments, pilot reports, radar blips, and guesswork, hoping it was enough to keep disaster at bay. Stress mounted with every passing minute. The controllers felt the weight of responsibility, knowing that a single misstep could have dire consequences as the situation threatened to spiral into chaos. In the cabins, hundreds of passengers waited in uneasy silence, families, couples, retirees, business travelers, and children. Some tried to distract themselves with books or conversation, while others simply stared into the endless gray outside, anxious and bored, unaware of the drama unfolding beyond their view. Among them sat Eve Meyer, a former actress and producer, perhaps lost in thought, her mind drifting between memories and the monotony of waiting. She, like so many others, had no inkling of the danger that was quietly building around them. Passengers scheduled for Las Palmas were now stranded on Tenerife, their plans upended. Some grew restless, others confused, but none could have imagined the true peril that was drawing closer with each passing moment. They were suspended in time, caught in a strange limbo, pieces in a puzzle of fate, waiting for the next move, unaware of the forces converging around them. None knew they were being moved, step by step, into their final, tragic positions on the stage of history. The fog became a solid wall, visibility dropped to near zero. Pan Am's crew struggled to find the correct taxiway, the markings unclear and exits too tight for a 747. Their voices betrayed growing frustration and uncertainty. In the tower, controllers juggled multiple unseen aircraft, relying on garbled radio reports and lacking ground radar. A crucial message that Pan Am was still on the runway was lost in the noise. Captain Van Zanten, pressured by duty time limits, prepared for takeoff, believing the runway was clear. His co-pilot tried to confirm with the tower, but their transmission collided with Pan Am's, creating a piercing squeal, masking both messages. The controllers heard only static. In the KLM cockpit, they missed the critical words. "We are still taxiing." Van Zanten, hearing only silence, took it as confirmation. "We're going," he said, pushing the throttles forward. The KLM jet accelerated into the blinding fog. As the KLM jet sped down the runway, the fog seemed to come alive, swirling, coiling, forming shapes like grasping hands. A deep, resonant hum filled the air, ancient and predatory. In the Pan Am cabin, passengers felt a sudden, unnatural cold, some glimpsing fleeting shadows or hearing faint, sorrowful whispers. Co-pilot Bragg sensed a presence in the fog, a primal warning of danger. He glimpsed a gaunt figure on the runway, pointing, then gone. The fog was more than weather, it was a shroud, feeding on confusion and fear. On this day, it seemed an ancient force had woven human error and bad luck into a perfect storm, waiting for the inevitable. The radio became a channel for chaos, the heterodyne squeal masking critical transmissions. Some controllers later swore they heard a mocking laugh in the static. In the KLM cockpit, flight engineer Schroeder questioned if Pan Am was clear, but Van Zanten dismissed the concern. The fog seemed to cloud judgment, amplifying impatience and silencing caution. On Pan Am, the crew heard the roar of engines, takeoff power, growing louder. Bragg yelled, "We are still on the runway!" But it was too late. The sound of the KLM engines became a deafening roar, drowning out warnings. Shadows and whispers in the cabin grew louder, merging with the scream of engines. The supernatural and the real became one as disaster closed in. Two paths, one of steel and fire, one of desperate hope, were about to collide. The Pan Am crew saw landing lights emerge from the fog, impossibly close. Captain Grubb swerved left, throttles full, trying to escape. The KLM crew realized too late. Van Zanten pulled back, trying to leapfrog the Pan Am. The KLM jet lifted, but not enough. On Pan Am, passengers were thrown by the swerve. Those on the left saw the KLM's belly tear through their fuselage. A screech of metal, a violent impact, two worlds colliding. The KLM became briefly airborne, then crashed back to the runway, exploding in a fireball. Hundreds of lives were shattered in seconds. The fog glowed orange with fire. The catastrophe was complete. The KLM explosion was an apocalypse in the fog, a fireball consuming everything in its path. In an instant, the night was torn apart by a deafening roar, flames erupting into the thick mist, turning the runway into a scene of utter devastation. The blinding light of the explosion was swallowed almost immediately by the dense fog, leaving only chaos and confusion in its wake. For all aboard KLM, there was no time for escape. Their stories ended in an instant, lost in the inferno. The force of the blast shattered windows, tore through the fuselage, and left nothing but silence where moments before there had been life and anticipation. The passengers and crew were engulfed before they could even comprehend what was happening. The fire left a blackened scar on the runway, a grim reminder of the disaster. The once busy tarmac was now littered with twisted metal and scorched earth, the aftermath visible even as dawn began to break through the haze. On Pan Am, chaos reigned. Burning debris, jet fuel, and panic. The impact had torn open the fuselage and fire raced through the cabin, forcing passengers and crew into a desperate fight for survival. Screams echoed through the smoke as people scrambled to find exits, the heat and confusion overwhelming. Survivors, injured and disoriented, scrambled to escape the burning wreck. Some crawled through smoke-filled aisles, others stumbled over debris, all driven by instinct and fear. The fog outside made it nearly impossible to see, adding to the terror as they searched for safety. Co-pilot Bragg and engineer Warnes jumped from the cockpit, then helped others. Despite their own injuries and shock, they returned again and again, pulling survivors from the flames, guiding them through the darkness and confusion. Passengers leaped into the darkness, desperate to survive. Some jumped from broken doors, others slid down twisted metal, all risking injury for a chance at life. The night was filled with cries for help, and the sound of bodies hitting the wet ground. The fog played a final trick. Firefighters, blinded by mist, rushed to the KLM blaze. Unaware Pan Am survivors struggled nearby. Sirens wailed in the distance, but the rescuers could barely see a few feet ahead, their efforts hampered by the very fog that had caused the disaster. For a long, terrifying time, Pan Am survivors were alone, huddled on wet grass, watching their plane burn. The cold seeped into their bones as they waited, uncertain if help would ever find them in the darkness and mist. The fog that had orchestrated their doom now hid them from rescue. It muffled their cries and concealed their desperate signals, turning the airfield into a maze of shadows and uncertainty. They had survived the impact but now faced the aftermath. The reality of what had happened began to sink in as they looked around at the devastation, the loss and the uncertainty of what would come next. The silence was broken only by the crackle of fire and the cries of the injured. The tragedy was total, and for those who survived, the nightmare was only just beginning as they waited for rescue in the fog-shrouded darkness. In the aftermath, investigators pieced together the disaster from blackened wreckage and cockpit recordings. The world learned of miscommunications, pressure, and the fatal radio squeal. The official report blamed Van Zanten's premature takeoff, but also the fog, radio interference, and confusion. Survivors bore deep psychological scars, haunted by fire, screams, and loss. The airport absorbed the tragedy. Workers spoke of a lingering, sorrowful atmosphere. Stories spread of cold spots, missing tools, and a sense of being watched. The crash site became a place to avoid, the fog thicker and more menacing there. The disaster became legend, a ghost story of a day when the veil between worlds grew thin. Today, Tenerife North Airport is modern, with advanced safety systems, but the legacy of 1977 endures. The story is woven into the island's fabric, remembered whenever the Panza de Burro rolls in. Employees and pilots still speak of strange occurrences, melancholy footsteps, shadowy figures on foggy nights. The 583 souls lost are not forgotten. The legend of the phantom traveler persists, a man searching for his KLM flight, fading away before he can board. The fog was more than weather, it was a catalyst, amplifying human error into catastrophe. The ghosts of Los Rodeos are echoes of fear, confusion, and loss, reminders of the darkness that can lurk within a simple veil of fog. Even in a world of technology, we are sometimes at the mercy of ancient forces.